Right, I'm here today with Cole, who is a racing cyclist, and we're doing a 6-week follow-up of how he's gone with a new Reform saddle. Now, Reform, you may remember, is a Canadian-based company, and they have the world's first heat moldable saddle. Simply through the back of the saddle, to do the heat moulding, it's got a magnetic clip which you plug in and turn on. There are some instructions of how long to preheat it and how long to heat it, and we did that on our last video. So Cole, we said in the last video we would look at how this went over a longer period of time. It's now been 6 to 7 weeks. We originally had an asymmetrical bit of pain in the saddle on your left side.
Correct.
And it's probably dated since a fracture of your pelvis on that left side. And there's been persistent asymmetry in muscles and potentially bones since then. Can you tell us about the time course of recovery? Did you instantly go, all problems solved when I got over the 3-hour mark, or did it take a little while?
David, initially, I probably couldn't pick a huge difference because I think your body is used to sitting in a particular way on a bike seat, and it takes a little while for your body to readjust to what's new. I would have to say that after about the 3rd ride, I started to find that I could go the distance and didn't feel as though I wanted to get off the bike. And the challenge for me was in the Tour de Brisbane, because I knew it was going to be around about a 4-hour ride, and prior to that, at 2.5 hours, I wasn't happy on the bike. A bit unpleasant indeed. So I got through that okay. I didn't do as well as I thought, but nonetheless I was on the bike for 4 hours. And in some of my training programs, I'm spending up to 4 hours at a time on the bike. I did one of those yesterday, and I would have to say that I was able to cycle through the whole 4 hours and not feeling as though I've got to get off the bike and nothing was going numb, which used to happen before. And I would say that these Reform saddles have absolutely fixed the problem that I had.
Beautiful. It's good to have a game changer, and blokes out there, don't ignore genital numbness. It can lead to things that you really don't want, things that are more like this instead of like that, and no one wants that. So please act early if it's a problem. One of the things I wanted to point out is that wherever your backside is going to sit on a saddle, there will be some areas of pressure. And so when you're changing saddles to solve a problem, you don't get zero pressure on the area that was giving you the most pressure, and by getting the right saddle, and in this case having it mould exactly to your anatomy, we've lowered the pressure down from being a red hot spike of pressure just down to normal pressure, and your body, as Cole's just described, over a number of weeks starts to get used to this, and that area stops getting hammered, stops getting sore and inflamed, and it starts to be able to cope with what you're doing. And that's pretty much what we've had happen.
Yes.
And that's what we want to have happen, but it's not an instant light switch where suddenly there's no pressure and everything heals in the blink of an eye. Things take a few weeks to heal. So that's the first thing I wanted to say there. In a sec, we'll go and have a look at the differences between the two saddles, which may, a couple of other little tips that may influence your choice to do with the angles and to do with the width and the shape. But both of them have quite a groove, quite a cutout, and some very solid padding. And I'd have to say, having just seen Unbound Gravel 1 in the 359 mile, 576 category on a Reform saddle, record time of 17 hours 49 minutes. It's an awfully long time to spend on a saddle on rough conditions, so I am thinking this padding is probably pretty handy. Alright, so if we have a look at the two Reform saddles, we have the Seymour on the bike and we have the Tantalus, which is the titanium rail saddle in my hand. Now if we come over here, we'll have a look at two different things. One is from the top view, you'll see that the Tantalus has more of an angular sort of arrow shape, whereas underneath our Seymour is a bit squarer. Alright, so one of the things we'll look at for the two saddles to give you another idea of the difference is our carbon rail saddle, the Seymour, is just slightly curved across the back, and that means that we have a wider platform for our ischial tuberosities, or our sitter bones, to sit on. And that means that if we line this up, our effective width is about 113 or 112 millimetres from when this drops by centimetre. If we compare it to our other alternative saddle, instead of being as flat, it's more curved, which means that we have less effective width for our sit bones to sit on. So if we come in a bit closer, this guy is closer to 100 millimeters, 101. So it's not quite as wide because of the extra curve, and that may affect some people's choice. All right, one last difference I wanted to cover on the saddles was some saddles have a design that has almost like a trampoline effect to cushion by virtue of a bit of give in the shell. Now, our Tantalus has a bit more structure and is a bit more solid. So when I try to press down, there's a little bit of flex. But if I pop that down and we have a look at the Seymour, it's got a little bit less structure around the back. It actually has a bit more give in the middle, which I hope you can see there. And that can be good when you're hitting potholes or perhaps over some rough roads, like on the unbound gravel. It gives you a bit more shock absorption. All right, so Cole, the other thing I wanted to ask is we did an initial moulding.
Yes.
Have you stuck with that? Did you feel the need to remould, or has it been able to be just as it was, the one shot, one stop type?
Dave, initially, you know, after the first couple of rides and it didn't feel that good, there was the temptation to remould it, and I thought, no, I've got to let my body get used to this.
Yeah.
And having done that, I would now say that there is no need to remould it, that it's there. But in reading the instructions that come with the saddle, it appears to me to be a fairly simple process.
It was, wasn't it?
If it does have to be remoulded at some time in the future. But right now, I'd say...
Yeah, once was enough.
Yep. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
100% with saddles. And I think the other thing I would say is that bodies change going forward. We get less fit, we get more fit, we gain weight, we lose weight, we have injuries, different things happen. So it is quite reasonable to expect your anatomy to maybe be slightly asymmetrical or more symmetrical depending on what you're doing in the gym. Don't be frightened to remould. It's probably a good idea periodically.
And of course, David, when you get to my age, you're very aware of things getting remoulded and getting pushed out of shape too.
Fair enough.
So I can see that this could well be a bonus at some down the track.
Yeah, so it gives you some flexibility.
Yeah.
All right, so one of the things that happened with Cole's saddle when we moulded it is it became lower on the left side, and it actually started to mould and adapt to his anatomy. And one of the things I'll show you in a second is just how much this dropped on the left versus the right. And you can see it visually, possibly easier in the flesh than on a video. However, you'll look at it when we measure it, and it's only a 1 or 2 mil difference. And one of the interesting things with saddles and bike fitting is that 1 or 2 mils is all the difference between really comfortable and painless and really painful. And it doesn't sound like much, but when you've experienced it, you'll be quite amazed at how subtle the change might be. So one of the interesting things about Cole's situation was it was rather atypical. He probably had persistent asymmetries both in his bony anatomy and his muscular and tendons in the area. Now, many people have asymmetries. Maybe they've had a knee injury or some other injury like an ankle sprains in the past or a hamstring tear, and that causes it. Doesn't have to be a pelvic fracture. The other thing I want to point out is that if you can race this in things like unbound gravel, and the ability to heat mould it to your anatomy is what makes it comfortable, and that's a fairly universal saddle for a lot of people. And I'm pleased to hear that to make it more universal, the company's now working on some different widths, because we all have different width sit bones, and the key is matching the width and these shapes that we were talking about earlier to your anatomy, and then heat moulding it may really offer you some advantages. So great job, Reform Saddles, and hopefully that will be something that's useful for many people for whatever reason you're having saddle discomfort.